Listen, nobody tells you about the weird stuff when you sign up for xenobiology fieldwork. They tell you about the grant money, sure. They mention the prestige of being the first human to catalog a newly discovered species. They even warn you about the diseases, the atmospheric incompatibilities, and the 17-page waiver about dying in ways that haven't been invented yet. What they don't tell you is that sometimes you end up as an accidental space parent to a fuzzy murder machine that thinks your multi-tool is a toy. According to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. My name is Marcus Webb, and I'm an idiot. Let me back up. 3 months ago, I landed on Kirath 7, a frontier world where the dominant species, the Kirathi, had just made first contact with the Galactic Council. Beautiful planet, really. Purple forests, 3 moons, gravity just light enough to make you feel like you could dunk a basketball if basketball courts existed here. Which they don't, because the Kirathi think competitive sports are a waste of hunting time. The Kirathi themselves are, well, imagine if a tiger and a bear had a baby, and that baby was raised by wolves, and those wolves were really into honor codes and personal combat. They're massive, covered in striped fur that ranges from silver to deep amber, with retractable claws that can shred plasteel and teeth that make earth sharks look like they have a dental disorder. They're apex predators on a planet full of apex predators, which is really just showing off if you ask me. They're also deeply suspicious of anything weak. When humans first showed up with our soft skin and our lack of natural weapons and our tendency to die if we fall off things that Kirathi children jump off for fun, they were, let's say, unimpressed. The council assigned me to study their social structures, specifically their child-rearing practices. The Kirathi agreed because they found the concept hilarious. A human studying how they raise cubs? That's comedy gold in the Kirath 7 entertainment circuit, apparently. I was basically their Netflix. The research station they set me up with was on the outskirts of a Kirathi settlement called Sharp Rock Hold. Yes, that's the actual translation. No, they don't believe in creative naming conventions. There's also a place called Tall Tree Place, and another called Water That Moves. I've stopped questioning it. For the first month, things went smoothly. I observed from a distance, took notes, didn't die. The Kirathi mostly ignored me, except for the occasional curious youngling who would sniff in my direction before being pulled away by a scandalized parent. Humans smell weird to them, apparently. Something about our pheromone profile suggesting both prey and spoiled meat. Real confidence booster, that. Then I met Crash. I was doing routine maintenance on my habitat dome when I heard it. A sound like a squeaky toy being murdered, coming from the equipment shed. I grabbed my plasma cutter because you don't survive 3 months on a predator planet by being casual about mysterious noises, and went to investigate. There, tangled in a mesh supply net, was the smallest Kirathi I'd ever seen. Now, small is relative. This cub was still the size of a German shepherd, with oversized paws and ears too big for its head. Its fur was pale silver with barely visible stripes, and its eyes were huge and golden and absolutely terrified. It saw me and made a noise that I can only describe as fierce kitten trying to sound like a lion. Adorable. Absolutely adorable. Also absolutely going to grow up to be a 7-foot-tall murder machine, but in that moment, adorable. The cub had gotten itself thoroughly trapped, trying to, near as I could figure, steal my spare power cells. Because apparently even Kirathi children are attracted to shiny human technology like magpies with teeth. Now, here's where my idiot brain kicked in. Standard protocol says, don't touch the locals. Don't interfere. Don't adopt the alien wildlife, no matter how cute it is. But this cub was genuinely stuck, thrashing around and getting more tangled, and I could hear its little whimpers of frustration. I put down the plasma cutter. Okay, tiny apex predator, let's get you out of there. The cub froze, stared at me, made a decision that I was apparently less scary than being trapped, which, fair enough. Have you seen me? I'm 5'9", and my most intimidating feature is my ability to open pickle jars. I carefully cut away the netting. The cub watched my every movement with those huge eyes, tracking the blade with the focus of something that already understood sharp things. When the last strand fell away, it didn't bolt like I expected. Instead, it sat there, looking at me, then at the plasma cutter in my hand, then back at me. Then it chirped. I'm not kidding. This creature, whose species has a reputation for ripping apart armored prey with their bare claws, chirped like an oversized kitten. "You're welcome," I said, because I talk to animals like a crazy person. "Now go home before your parents decide I kidnapped you and turned me into a protein supplement." The cub tilted its head, looked at the plasma cutter again. Then, faster than I could react, it grabbed the tool right out of my hand with its mouth and bolted. "Hey, that's expensive equipment." I chased it approximately 15 feet before remembering that A, I wasn't going to catch a Karathi cub, and B, running after one like a maniac was a good way to get defensive parents involved. So I stopped, watched the little furball disappear into the purple forest with my plasma cutter, and stood there contemplating my life choices. That was my first mistake. Not stopping it from taking the tool, but what I did next. I didn't report it. I should have filed an incident report with the council, documented the contact, followed protocol. But something in my brain said, "Marcus, if you report this, they'll either demand the cub be punished, or they'll pull you off the planet for unauthorized interference, or both. Plus, it's just one tool. It'll probably drop it somewhere." Narrator voice. It did not drop it somewhere. The next morning, I woke up to find my plasma cutter sitting on the step outside my habitat dome. Just sitting there. Carefully placed, not dropped, not thrown, placed, like someone had delivered it. I picked it up, examined it. Not a scratch beyond the existing wear and tear. The cub had carried this thing through the forest and brought it back. Weird, I muttered, and went about my day. That afternoon, I was working on my observation drone, had my sonic wrench sitting on the workbench, turned around for literally 30 seconds, and when I turned back, the wrench was gone. Oh, come on. I knew exactly what had happened. Somewhere in the forest, a small silver criminal was probably very proud of itself. Sure enough, next morning, sonic wrench on the doorstep. This continued for 2 weeks. The cub would sneak into my work area, which I'd started deliberately leaving accessible because, again, idiot brain, and steal a tool. Something different each time. My laser measure, a diagnostic scanner, a box of fasteners that it had to drag because the box was nearly as big as the cub's head. And every single morning, like clockwork, the item would be returned. I started leaving out snacks. Nothing big, just some of the nutrient bars from my supplies. They were terrible, tasted like compressed sadness and artificial berries. But I figured if the cub was going to rob me daily, I might as well pay the toll. The snacks disappeared too. But those didn't come back. I named the cub Crash, which was my attempt at mimicking the sound it made when it knocked over my tool chest the first time it got brave enough to enter the habitat while I was inside. I pretended not to see it. The cub pretended to be invisible. We had an understanding. Except I was starting to realize this wasn't just playful theft. Karash wasn't playing with the tools or breaking them. The items came back clean, sometimes cleaner than when they'd been taken. And I noticed something else. The pattern. Karash always took tools when I'd been using them. Not random equipment. Things it had watched me handle. The plasma cutter I'd used to free it. The sonic wrench I'd used to repair the drone. The diagnostic scanner I'd used to check my habitat's life support. This tiny predator was watching me work and then borrowing my tools. No, not borrowing. Studying. The realization hit me during week 3 when I deliberately left out my datapad, running a diagnostic program with lots of colorful displays. I hid behind a storage crate and watched. Karash crept in, all exaggerated stealth, ears swiveling to track every sound. It approached the datapad like it was hunting, which was honestly hilarious, given the datapad couldn't fight back. Then it sat down and just watched the screen. For 20 minutes, a cub that I'd clocked at approximately 4 to 6 months old by Kirathi standards, judging by the size and clumsiness, was sitting there watching data scroll by like it meant something. When the program finished and the screen went dark, Karash made a disappointed sound, gently picked up the datapad in its mouth, and trotted toward the door. "Learning or stealing, little one?" I whispered. Karash's ears flicked back. It had heard me. The cub froze mid-step, turned its head slowly, and looked directly at the storage crate I was hiding behind. Our eyes met. I tried to keep my expression neutral, like I totally wasn't spying on a juvenile alien. Karash made a decision, set the datapad down very carefully, and walked over to my hiding spot with all the gravity of a judge approaching the bench. We stared at each other. Me, a grown human man, versus a cub probably young enough to still be nursing in Kirathi terms. In that moment, I understood how parents feel when they catch their toddler doing something they shouldn't. And the toddler knows they've been caught. And now it's a standoff about who blinks first. Karash broke first. The cub made a chittering sound, bumped its huge head against my knee hard enough to nearly knock me over, and then ran back to grab the datapad before bolting out the door. The next morning, datapad on the doorstep, and next to it, a dead thing. I'm not being vague. I genuinely don't know what it was. Some kind of local 6-legged rodent analog, clearly freshly killed, laid out with what I can only describe as pride. Karash was either courting me or had decided I was too incompetent to feed myself. Given that I was currently eating reconstituted noodles that tasted like regret, the cub wasn't entirely wrong. "Thank you," I told the forest, because I knew Karash was watching. "But I can't eat that. Different biology, buddy. I'd probably die." A sad chirp from somewhere in the purple trees. I felt like I'd kicked a puppy. A puppy that could grow up to kick me through a wall, but still. From then on, I started leaving out better treats. I did some research into Kirathi dietary needs, synthesized some protein supplements that matched their nutritional profile, and left them in small portions. The first time Karash found them, I heard an excited trill that probably woke up half the settlement. We had a routine now. Karash would come by twice a day. Morning visit to return whatever had been borrowed and collect breakfast. Evening visit to steal something new and scout for dinner. I'd pretend not to notice when the cub was around, continuing my work like there wasn't a growing predator learning to open my storage lockers. The Kirathi settlement remained blissfully unaware. Or so I thought. Month 2 was when things got complicated. I started noticing Karash was getting bolder, staying longer, making more noise. The cub had also grown noticeably. Those oversized paws were filling out, the stripes were getting darker and more defined, and the chirps were occasionally interrupted by sounds that were definitely attempting to be roars. One evening, Crash didn't show up. I tried not to worry. Maybe the cub had gotten distracted. Maybe there was some kind of Kirathi family thing. Maybe I was overthinking my relationship with a juvenile alien that had imprinted on me through a combination of theft and mutual tool appreciation. Second evening, still nothing. Third evening, I went looking. Again, protocol says don't do this. Protocol says a lot of things I'd been ignoring. I took my emergency beacon, a med kit, and my remaining plasma cutter, and headed into the forest in the direction I'd always seen Crash disappear. The purple foliage was thick. The local wildlife made sounds that suggested they were judging my life choices. And I was acutely aware that I was a squishy human in the territory of apex predators. But I'd spent 2 months watching a cub bring me stolen tools, like a cat bringing dead birds. And I'd be damned if something had happened to the little criminal. I found Crash in a small clearing, and the cub wasn't alone. 3 adult Kirathi surrounded it. 2 were massive, clearly in their prime, with scars that told stories of hunts and fights. The third was slightly smaller, but no less intimidating. And all 3 were focused on Crash, who was backed against a fallen log, making sounds that were trying so hard to be threatening, but came out as scared. My universal translator, which I'd honestly forgotten I was wearing, crackled to life. "Weak," one of the adults growled. "Defective. It hides. It steals instead of hunts. It brings shame to the clutch." Oh no. I understood immediately. Crash wasn't just any cub. Crash was the runt, the weak one. In a society that valued strength above all, a cub that couldn't keep up with its siblings, that preferred sneaking to fighting, that was small and uncertain, was a problem. The smaller adult, who I guessed was the mother based on her positioning, spoke next. "The weak die. It is the way. If it cannot hunt, it cannot survive the next cold season. Better to end it now than watch it starve." Crash made a sound that broke my heart. A whimper, a plea. I stepped into the clearing. 3 massive predators turned to look at me. I had approximately 2 seconds to realize this was the single dumbest thing I'd ever done, and I once tried to pet a wild bear as a child. "Wait," I said, and my voice only shook a little. "Don't hurt it." The largest male tilted his head. The soft skin. "You speak our tongue?" "Translator." I tapped the device. "Look, I know this isn't my business, but that cub, Crash, it's not weak, it's smart." "Smart?" The male's laugh was a rumble that I felt in my chest. "It cannot hunt. It hides from its clutchmates. It fears combat trials. This is weakness." "No," I said, with more confidence than I had any right to feel. "It's adaptation." I pulled out my datapad, pulled up the observation logs I'd been keeping. For 2 months, Crash has been stealing my tools. Not to play, to learn. It watches me work. It studies human technology. It figured out how to open magnetic locks, how to operate touch screens, how to be completely silent when it wants to be. Do you know how hard that is? Your cub is a natural engineer and a perfect infiltrator. The mother stepped forward, and I tried not to visibly flinch. "This means nothing. The hunt provides. Tools are for weak species who cannot survive with tooth and claw." "Really?" I looked at her dead on, which was either brave or suicidal. "Then why do you trade with the Galactic Council? Why do you use plasma weapons and shield generators when you could just use teeth and claws?" "Because adaptation isn't weakness. It's survival. It's evolution. And your cub has been doing it instinctively." The male growled. "You know nothing of our ways, human." "Maybe not," I admitted. "But I know that every species that survives does it by finding advantages. Humans didn't have claws or fangs. We had tools and teamwork. And we became the dominant species on our planet because we adapted. Karash isn't broken. Karash is ahead of the curve. There was a long, tense silence. Karash had stopped whimpering and was staring at me with those huge golden eyes. The third adult, who hadn't spoken yet, made a thoughtful rumble. The soft skin is bold, stupid, but bold. Perhaps there is wisdom in its words. Perhaps, the mother said slowly. There is use for a cub who understands the tools of other species. If we are to trade with the galaxy, having one who speaks their language would be valuable. The large male huffed. Or it will remain weak and die at first true challenge. But the human has spoken for it. Let the human bear the responsibility. If the cub fails, the human shares its shame. Oh, good. I just adopted an alien. This was fine. Everything was fine. Deal, I said, because I'm an idiot. The three adults left, fading into the forest like they'd never been there. Crash remained, staring at me, trembling slightly. Come on, I said gently. Let's go home. Crash followed me back to the habitat, silent for the first time since I'd known the cub. When we got inside, the little predator went straight to the corner where I'd been leaving the treats and curled up in a tight ball. I sat down nearby, not too close. You okay, kiddo? Crash looked at me and made the smallest, saddest sound. Yeah, I said. I know, that was scary. But hey, you've got a weird space uncle now. Well, space guardian. Space weird human who yells at your parents. Whatever I am, you're stuck with me. The cub unfurled slightly, scooted closer, put its massive head on my leg. We sat there for a long time. Me, a human light years from home, and a juvenile predator who liked to steal tools. The universe's weirdest family unit. That was 2 months ago. Since then, things have changed. Crash doesn't hide anymore. The cub comes and goes openly, splits time between the settlement and my habitat. I built a proper sleeping area, got approval from the council to formally foster cross-species cultural exchange, which is bureaucrats speak for fine, keep the murder kitten. The settlement's attitude shifted too. Turned out other Kirathi had noticed a human and a runt cub forming a bond. Some found it amusing, some found it fascinating. A few of the elders started asking me questions about human child rearing, about how we handle younglings who don't fit traditional molds. I told them the truth. We find their strengths. We teach them differently. We don't throw them away for being unique. Revolutionary concept, apparently. Karash is thriving. The cub's not just stealing tools anymore. Karash is learning to use them. We have work sessions where I explain human technology, and the cub absorbs everything like a fuzzy sponge. Karash can now operate a dozen different devices, can troubleshoot basic technical problems, and has an instinctive understanding of mechanical systems that honestly puts some human engineers to shame. The stealing hasn't stopped, by the way. I'll be missing a tool, and sure enough, Karash has it somewhere, taking it apart to see how it works. But now the cub asks first, usually. There's a work-in-progress understanding of permission happening. And every night, without fail, Karash leaves whatever borrowed item outside my sleeping area, like a tribute, or an apology, or maybe just a reminder that this relationship started with theft and has stayed consistently on brand. Last week, Karash brought another cub around. Smaller, with darker stripes, clearly also struggling to keep up with more aggressive siblings. The two of them sat outside my habitat, watching me work through the window like I was the most interesting thing on the planet. I sighed, got out my protein supplements, and left portions for both of them. I'm not running an orphanage. I'm not. This is cultural exchange. This is research. This is absolutely not me accidentally becoming the weird human who collects misfit predator cubs like some kind of space Disney princess. But if a few more show up, I guess I have room. After all, the galaxy's a big place, full of species that don't fit the mold their societies created, full of beings told they're too weak, too different, too wrong to survive. And if a human can teach anything to the universe, it's this. Sometimes the runts, the misfits, the ones who think differently, they're not the weak ones. They're the ones who change everything. Plus, Crash just figured out how to operate my coffee maker, and I'm not giving that up. Life's too short to make coffee manually when you have a helpful predator cub with thumbs. Well, they're technically retractable claws, but close enough. My name is Marcus Webb. I came to Kyrath 7 to study alien child-rearing practices. Instead, I became a parent to a tool-stealing genius cub who brings me stolen equipment like love letters. The universe has a sense of humor, and I'm absolutely never telling my colleagues back home about any of this because they'd never let me live it down. But you know what? I wouldn't change a thing. Well, maybe I'd invest in better locks for my equipment shed. Crash's siblings are learning from the master thief, and I'm running out of backup tools. But that's a problem for future Marcus. Present Marcus is just happy that the weird little cub who was almost killed for being different is now teaching other cubs that there's more than one way to be strong. Even if that way involves grand larceny of human technology. Some things you just have to accept